Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going way back to ancient Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
We're diving into Exodus chapter 7
Okay.
to unpack this showdown between Moses and Pharaoh.
All right. One of the most famous showdowns.
Yeah, exactly.
What's so captivating about this chapter is how it lays the groundwork for the whole Exodus narrative.
Right.
We're not just talking miracles here.
Mm-hmm.
We're diving into the tension between faith and doubt,
Yeah.
the nature of power,
Okay.
and the clash of wills between a king and a god.
All right, so let's picture this.
Yeah.
Moses is 80 years old.
Okay.
Aaron is 83.
Wow.
They're about to walk up to Pharaoh,
The most powerful man in Egypt.
the most powerful man in Egypt, and demand he lets the Israelites go.
Talk about a high-pressure situation.
Right.
It's like David versus Goliath, but with even higher stakes.
Yeah.
What makes it even more intriguing is that God tells Moses
Uh-huh.
he's going to be like a god to Pharaoh,
Oh.
with Aaron as his prophet.
So right from the start, you have this like power dynamic of divine power working through these two guys.
Seemingly ordinary men, yeah.
But then it gets even more complex because God also tells Moses that he's going to harden Pharaoh's heart.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
You see the hardening of Pharaoh's heart.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a plot device.
Okay.
It's crucial to God's plan.
Right.
By hardening Pharaoh's heart, God sets the stage for all these judgments.
Yeah.
Each one revealing his power
Uh-huh.
and ultimately leading to the freedom of the Israelites.
So it's like God is using Pharaoh's stubbornness as a way to showcase his own power
Yeah.
and orchestrate this exodus.
Right.
So let's rewind a bit to that first confrontation.
Yeah.
God tells Moses that when Pharaoh demands proof,
Okay.
Aaron should throw down his staff and it'll turn into a snake.
It's a classic power move.
Yeah.
And it plays right into the Egyptian fascination with magic.
Right.
But Egyptian magic wasn't just illusions.
Right.
It was part of their religious beliefs.
Oh, okay.
It was how they understood the universe.
So when Aaron throws down his staff and it turns into a snake,
Yeah.
everyone would have been stunned.
I mean, we're talking about a culture that believed in magic.
Yeah.
But this was something else entirely.
But then the Egyptian magicians try to one-up Aaron.
Right.
They turn their staffs into snakes, too. It's
Yeah.
like a magical showdown.
Battle of the Staffs.
But then Aaron's serpent devours all the other serpents.
Talk about a power move.
It's a clear sign that God's power is on a whole other level.
Right.
So you'd think that would convince Pharaoh.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, his heart is hardened. He
Mhm.
refuses to budge.
It's not just a battle of miracles.
Yeah,
It's a battle of wills. Pharaoh is clinging to his authority,
Yeah.
his own control.
So round one goes to God,
Right.
but the fight's not over,
No.
which brings us to the Nile River.
Okay. The lifeblood of Egypt.
God tells Moses to meet Pharaoh by the riverbank in the morning.
You know things are about to get serious when the Nile's involved?
Yep.
The Nile was more than just a river to the Egyptians.
Yeah.
It was the source of their life, their prosperity.
Hmm.
They worshipped it as a god,
Wow.
believing it was the key to their survival.
So when Moses raises his staff and strikes the Nile, turning the water into blood,
Yeah.
it's not just a plague, it's an attack on Egyptian culture.
Exactly. The impact is devastating.
Right.
The fish die.
Yeah.
The water's undrinkable.
The stench is unbearable.
Yeah, it's chaos.
And yet the magicians managed to mimic this plague too.
Right. They turn some water into blood.
But they can't undo it.
Right.
They can copy it, but they can't control.
Which shows the limits of their magic.
Okay.
Their power comes from their understanding of the natural world,
Yeah.
compared to God who created that world.
And after 7 days of blood, Pharaoh's heart is still hardened.
He just refuses to back down.
Even as his whole kingdom suffers.
Yeah.
This stubbornness, this refusal to acknowledge God's power, where do you think it comes from?
Well, that takes us deep into human nature. And it's something we'll continue to explore as we go through the plagues.
It's amazing how much depth there is in just these first 2 plagues.
Right.
I'm already hooked.
And we're just getting started.
Yeah.
The next round of plagues takes us even further into this battle of wills,
Okay.
revealing even more about power, faith, and defiance.
Can't wait to unpack all of that. But for
Right.
now, we'll leave you to ponder this.
Okay.
What does it take to break a hardened heart?
That's a good question.
We left off with Pharaoh refusing to acknowledge God.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
This clash between the evidence and his beliefs about his own authority, the power of the Egyptian gods.
What happens next?
Well, God ups the ante,
Okay.
and this time things get a little amphibious.
Amphibious.
We're talking frog. Lots of
That's
them.
okay.
Now, the plague of frogs is often overlooked
Right.
because frogs, well, they don't seem as dramatic as a river of blood.
Right.
But think about it. Hordes of frogs
Yeah.
everywhere, in your house, your bed, your food.
That would be pretty bad.
It's a complete disruption.
Yeah.
A demonstration of God's control over nature.
All right. I have to admit, I wouldn't be too happy about frogs in my bed.
And even more interesting is that the Egyptian magicians,
Yeah.
they managed to add even more frogs. It makes you wonder if they were starting to question what they were doing.
Yeah, maybe they realized their magic wasn't as powerful.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It seems like even those who practiced magic,
Uh-huh.
they recognize a distinction
Okay.
between their abilities and this power.
So they could mimic it, but they couldn't undo it.
Exactly.
Only Moses has that authority.
Yeah, God's command, right?
So Pharaoh begs Moses to get rid of the frogs.
Promising to let the Israelites go.
But as soon as the frogs are gone,
His heart hardens again.
of course.
This cycle
Yeah.
of plague, suffering, begging for mercy, temporary relief,
Oh.
and then back to defiance.
It's like a broken record.
Right. And it raises those big questions.
Like what?
Free will versus predestination.
Oh, wow. That's deep.
Was Pharaoh free to choose?
Yeah.
Or was he destined to play this role?
It's a mind-boggling concept.
It adds this layer of complexity.
Yeah, for sure.
But okay, let's move on.
Okay.
The next plague,
What's next?
lice.
Lice.
And this one seems to stump the magicians.
Oh, really? They can't handle lice?
Their spells are useless.
Wow.
They even admit to Pharaoh,
What do they say?
this is the finger of God.
So they finally realize there's a greater power at work.
It's a powerful moment.
Yeah.
They glimpse something beyond their control.
You'd think that would be a wake-up call for Pharaoh.
But his heart remains hardened.
Unbelievable.
It's like each plague just makes him dig in his heels more.
So maybe these plagues aren't just about punishing Pharaoh.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
What if they're about revealing his character?
To himself and everyone around him.
Exactly.
It's not just about power. It's about internal transformation.
Or the lack thereof.
Right. And as we go through the remaining plagues...
You'll see this theme of revelation.
Okay.
Each plague peels back another layer,
Okay.
revealing more about God and Pharaoh.
So we've got flies, pestilence, boils, hail.
Each one more intense.
Yeah, it's like God is saying, you want to see power? I'll show you power.
And you can imagine the impact on the Egyptians.
Yeah. The text doesn't hold back.
It depicts their suffering,
The imperation.
the fear,
Yeah.
the loss.
It's a reminder that even in these grand narratives,
right.
there are real human costs.
But even with all this devastation,
Yeah.
Pharaoh remains defiant.
It's hard to understand that level of stubbornness.
It speaks to pride,
Yeah.
the fear of losing control.
The unwillingness to admit defeat.
These are themes that resonate throughout history.
Absolutely.
It leaves us wondering,
What
will it finally take to break Pharaoh?
What will be the final straw? We're nearing the climax of the showdown between God and Pharaoh.
Yeah, each plague is intensified.
We've seen blood frogs, lice, flies, pestilence, boils, hail.
And now we come to the 8th plague.
Okay, what's next?
Locusts.
Not just a few locusts.
We're
right?
talking a massive swarm.
Oh, wow.
A living cloud that descends upon Egypt.
Can you even imagine?
The text says the sky darkens as the swarm approaches.
That's gotta be terrifying.
The air is thick with the buzzing of millions of insects.
And then,
What was once fertile and green
yeah,
is stripped bare.
that's a powerful image
It shows the fragility of human existence.
in the face of nature.
Yeah, a power wielded by God.
So what does Pharaoh do?
But even his advisors are begging him to relent.
They must be pretty scared.
They warn him that Egypt will be destroyed.
If he doesn't free the Israelites,
It's a moment of truth for Pharaoh,
will he choose his people over his pride?
but he only agrees to let the men go.
Not the women or children.
He's still trying to bargain.
Even in the face of this threat.
Of course, Moses refuses. The locusts descend.
It's only after the devastation.
That Pharaoh finally relents.
He must be desperate.
He begs Moses to end the plague.
But as soon as the crisis is over,
His heart hardens again.
unbelievable. He just can't let go of his pride.
It shows how deep his defiance runs.
So what finally breaks him?
The 9th plague.
Okay, what is it?
Darkness.
Not just nighttime darkness,
A
right?
thick darkness.
Not over all of Egypt.
For 3 days.
I can't even imagine.
The text says people couldn't even move,
Wow.
frozen in this darkness.
That would be terrifying.
And think about the symbolism.
Okay.
Darkness in a culture that worshipped the sun god.
So it's a direct challenge to their beliefs.
God is showing that he controls even the light.
But even this doesn't break Pharaoh.
No, he remains defiant.
So we come to the final plague.
The death of the firstborn.
This one's different.
It's not about nature anymore.
It's a personal attack.
On Egyptian families.
And there's no warning this time.
No chance to bargain.
It's sudden and swift.
Imagine the grief and terror. This plague shows that defiance has consequences.
Pharaoh's power has limits.
And this is what finally breaks him.
He must be completely devastated.
He agrees to let the Israelites go.
He finally gives in.
The death of the firstborn marks the end of his resistance.
And the beginning of the Israelites' journey to freedom.
Exodus chapter 7 is more than just plagues and miracles.
It's about so much more.
Faith and doubt.
Power and authority.
The consequences of disobedience.
And the triumph of God's will.
It makes us think about our own lives.
How do we respond to challenges?
To setbacks.
When our beliefs are tested?
Do we cling to control?
Or do we surrender to something greater?
It's a question that still resonates today.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Exodus chapter 7.